Welcome back, and into this video we're going to be talking about 10 tips to unlock the Leica Q system to its full potential. And it doesn't matter what kind of Leica Q you own. Now after you watch this video, guarantee you're going to become that photographer that you wanted to become when using these beautiful cameras. Of course, the talent is going to be really up to you. Why don't we get started? Now the first tip is going to be leverage the power of this lens design, and let me explain. Now if you take a look at these two cameras, I have the Leica M11 monochrome right here with the Summilux 35mm f1.4. This is the 2023 version. And right next to it I have my Leica Q3 43. Now when you take a look at these lenses, you're going to realize that the lenses are very similar in its construction. And what I mean is that these lenses are going to feature a manual aperture ring control, always located at the front. And then we're going to have the focusing ring with a tab. Super important and crucial to me, at least, is going to be the distance scale printed on these lenses. And this is going to be very important for zone focusing. So when I use this camera, what I like to do is pretty much, dial my distance on the lens, especially for street. Let's say, I'm going to be at 2 meters from my subject. So I dial the distance scale to 2 meters, moving the focusing tab to that position. And then I try to narrow down my aperture to an f11. My aperture is going to be small. Therefore, the margin of error when it comes to focus is going to be very forgiving. And for as long as my subject is at 2 meters, I always get my images in focus. And the moment I press the shutter, the camera is going to snap a picture in focus based on the distance that we dial. And you guys know these cameras have autofocus, and the autofocus is actually really good. And when the tab is actually locked in this position, the camera uses autofocus, but the moment you disengage the tab, now the focus is really up to you. So for that reason alone, I always consider the Leica Q kind of like the king of its kind. There's no other camera that can compete. The Leica Q always takes the win. All right, tip number 2, you must set up your auto ISO limit right away. The moment you get the camera, and if you haven't done it, let's go and show you how to do it. So what you're gonna do is you're gonna press the menu twice, and you're gonna go to the second page, and you're gonna see right there, auto ISO settings. Now press once again, and there are gonna be some limits that you have to configure. We go one by one. So the first one is the maximum ISO, how high you want your ISO to be chosen automatically. And I use this camera in auto ISO, and it performs really good. Now, as you see right there, I have it set up to 50,000. You could even go higher, but I think 50,000 is enough. I never push it that high. Now let's actually move on to shutter speed limit and what this means. So if you're gonna be using the camera in shutter priority, meaning you actually set the camera in the A right there, by setting up this mode right here, the camera is gonna cap the shutter speed at 250. And 250 is a shutter speed that I feel comfortable knowing that I can freeze motion. So for the most part, 250. Would I ever wanna override the setting, I can simply dial the wheel to whatever shutter speed limit that I'm looking for. Specifically, if I'm gonna be in a lower light situation, I may drop it beyond the 250 of a second shutter speed. Let's actually move forward. The next one that we have is going to be the maximum ISO when you use a flash. How much you want the camera to crank up the ISO on top of the flash. Right here I have up to 100, but that's gonna be a limit that you can actually test and figure out which one works best for you. And also right here, when it comes to the shutter speed, you guys see I have it in auto, and I would actually leave it in auto. At this point, it's not so important for me because I'm gonna be freezing the action with the flash itself, not with the shutter speed. These cameras don't have a mechanical shutter in the body. The shutter is actually in the lens, and we have in these cameras a leaf shutter, which allows the camera to go that fast and synchronize with flashes up to 2,000 of a second. Tip number 3, relax and use auto mode. And this camera works really well when you use it in auto ISO and auto shutter speed. Now let me show you how to set up the auto shutter speed. You're gonna go right here and you're gonna dial the wheel to the A. Now we have set up the camera in auto shutter speed. The camera is gonna pick up the best suited shutter speed for the scene. Now for auto ISO, you're gonna go here in the menu, tap on ISO, and then tap on the A. Now the camera has been set up to choose the ISO automatically. Now remember in the prior point, we have set up all the limits, maximum ISO, and also minimum shutter speed, so the camera is gonna cap within those parameters. And what that means for you is more time and attention on your composition. No one is gonna judge a great photo, whether the photo was taken with auto ISO or manual ISO, but there are gonna be times that you are gonna wanna regain control of that shutter speed, and that is going to be key to get your images in focus or avoid motion blur. So focus more on your composition, let the camera decide the parameters. And remember, you can always compensate. We have here exposure compensation. We'll talk about that feature coming up. Tip number 4, never let a strap dictate the way you carry. Let me show my favorite strap, which is the one that I have right here in my camera. So this is the way that I like to carry my cameras when I'm, walking around, traveling on the street, kind of like chest high. And the strap that I have right here is the Owl Crown Trail Flex. Now this strap has a capability that can actually become longer or shorter while giving you at all time this very comfortable double webbing neck pad. And at the same time, I can now carry the camera around my shoulder, across my body, just wrap the camera around my wrist. Now the great thing about these camera straps is that they are super light and minimalist. So as you see, the strap pretty much disappear right now, and they're very easy to store attached to the camera. Now if you want to check them out, go to owlcrown.com, enter code GShutters10 for 10% off your next order. Tip number 5, shoot more flash photography with this camera. You would say, yeah, but this camera doesn't have a flash, and you're right. These cameras don't have a flash, but adding a flash is easier than ever before. Remember, the sync speed of this camera is up to 1 under 2,000 of a second, which is pretty impressive. Now, I also want to show you a little accessory that I have right here, which is this hot grip by Owl Crown. It gives you thumb support, but at the same time, it gives you compatibility with manual flashes by adding this pass-through hot shoe. And the way it works is super simple. I have an IM20 right here. Pop the flash in the camera, and now I have the best of both worlds, great ergonomics and also flash photography, as you can see. And using a flash can be something really, really fun to capture pictures that otherwise will be either way too noisy or in situation that is super, super dark. And remember, with the first part when I talked about the zone focusing, you can zone focus and actually focus in pitch dark, capturing a shot with a flash. Point number 6, leverage custom profiles, user profile. This is a very powerful tool. Not a lot of people do it because I talk to people. So let me show you how this works. We're gonna go back to photo, and you go one tap in the menu, tap right over here, and then you're gonna see my 3 configure profiles. I have one for black and white, which is the one that I use for street photography mainly. Then I have another one that I use for color. And last but not least, I have another profile, which is the one that I use from time to time for video. And in that profile, all my video settings are completely configured, my codec, my focusing mode, the audio, and whatever the case may be. So this is very powerful because it allows you to change and toggle from one situation to another and bringing all the settings active at once. All right, point number 7, take the time to configure your camera buttons. And the good thing is that the Leica Q3 or any of the Qs don't have a lot of buttons, but there are gonna be some buttons that I configure in a specific way. You can do whatever you want, but I wanna show you what I have done. Now this one right here at the top, I have it configured as the ISO, and I believe that this is the way that the camera comes in, but if yours is not, simply depress it, and now you are prompted with all the options that you can assign to that button. And this is pretty much how you configure buttons in this camera. Super easy. And why I want to do that is because, like I mentioned before, most of the time my camera is in the auto ISO mode. I have already set up my auto ISO limits. We talked about that earlier. So there are certain times that maybe I'm shooting flash, I want to gain control of my ISO, and it's right above the shutter speed dial, so it makes a lot of sense for that button to be configured as such. Now there's going to be another button that I love to configure for the recentering of the focusing mode, and this camera has touch screen, so you can touch the screen to move the focus. But for example, my focusing point right now is towards the right? And what I'm gonna do there is I'm gonna assign this button to this new mode that has been actually introduced with the latest firmware. It's called toggle focus point. So basically, if you select that option, what this button is going to do is going to recenter your focusing point. And it's a lot easier because before you have to tap twice in here, and a lot of the time was a misfire. So right now it doesn't matter where your focusing mode is, you can recall it to the center by pressing that button. And this is the one that I have assigned for that. And before this one was the toggle information, which I have moved right now to this button right here, toggle info level. So if I want the information to disappear, I just press that button right now and I have it there. And the one next to it, I have it configured for this one came for digital mode, but I actually like to make it photo and video mode. All right, tip number 8, you may want to leverage the tri-resolution capability of this camera. And if you know, this camera can actually shoot DNGs at 60 megapixel, at 36 megapixel, or at 18 megapixel. Now, most of the cameras that I own, they actually shoot in the 24 megapixel range. And of course, there have some cameras that do the 60 megapixel. But for a lot of photography, you know, I don't find the reason to shoot in 60 megapixel this day as much. 36, I can expand my prints, you know, as large as I want them. And for the most part, you know, 36 is the sweet point for me. But with the 43, I have it at 36. And let me show you. So you're gonna go to page number 2, then you're gonna locate DNG resolution, and right over here, you can select the different resolutions. Now, I consider 36 megapixel kind of like a happy medium between file size and great resolution to print, to do whatever you want to do. But once again, that's going to be really up to you. Number 9, let's talk about great tips for great exposure. So we're going to cover 2 things right now, or 2 or 3. We're going to talk about my favorite metering modes and when I use those modes, and also leveraging the screen to ultimately gauge the exposure by eye. So let's actually go through the first one. So we're gonna press in the menu, and then we're gonna go right here to the metering modes. Now this camera, as you see, has, you know, quite a few options for, and the one that I use most of the time is gonna be the center weighted. Now, why the center weighted? Because the center weighted is going to average the center of the screen exposure, and it's going to try to expose it pretty good. And for the most part, I tend to compose with the center and recompose. And for as long as I'm half pressing my shutter button, I am gonna lock the exposure, and then when I fully press my shutter button, you know, I take the shot. Now, there's another mode that I use sometime, and that is gonna be the multi-field. And let me show you multi-field. Go to menu, tap in here, and it's going to be the last one right here. So basically the multi-field, what it's going to do, is going to average the exposure of the entire screen. And this is a great metering mode when the light is even. The background, the foreground, the subject, specifically in overcast days, you may want to switch to that mode just to get, you know, good exposure. But the ultimate way to expose with this camera, in my opinion, is going to be by taking a look at the screen, and the screen does a pretty good job. So what I do is usually I shoot with a black and white mode, and I have my screen actually in black and white. So by gauging this screen in black and white, I can focus on light in the absence of light to see how well the camera is exposing. And for the most part, all the photos that you have seen today, they have actually been gauged and exposed that way. And the other best friend that you're gonna have is gonna be exposure compensation, specifically using the screen, and then you can go a little bit under or a little bit over. And tip number 10, carry your camera day in, day out, rain or shine, because there's no other way to get to know these cameras than carrying them consistently. These are super simple cameras to use, simpler than any of the other cameras that I used before. Also remember, bring a battery, never trust your life to one single SD card. So guys, let me know in the comments down below which ones are your favorite tips. We'd love to hear what you guys do to these cameras. And also I'm gonna be listing all the accessories and product that we discussed today, as well as this brand new shutter topper that makes firing, in my opinion, a lot faster. So guys, until then, I'll see you in the next video. Take care.